Audiophiles of the internet, my name is Adriana and today I'm here to finally bring you my October wrap-up. I finally started school again at the very beginning of October, so going into the month my reading expectations were very low. But I ended up really surprising myself and I actually have a ton of books to talk about today, so let's get started. BT dubs, all the books I'm going to share with you today are excluding a couple of the novels that I had to read for class because nobody cares, those are a little bit boring, I'm fine with admitting that. But without further ado, the first book that I read this month was 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstad. This book is about 3 teenagers who win a worldwide lottery and win the opportunity to go to the moon. Despite popular opinion on BookTube and a lot of people who very highly praise this story, I hated it. And what kills me the most is that this book was actually translated, so I have no idea if in the original language it was like the most amazing, mind-blowing thing ever, but the translation was so appallingly bad. And the English translation really made the entire story sound so childish and far-fetched and unbelievable. I was just not impressed by the writing of this story at all, and I gave it 1.5 stars. That's it. And after that, thanks to some encouragement from the lovely Maria from Maria Muses, I read the first 2 books in the Mediator series by Meg Cabot. This series is about a teenage girl named Susanna Simons who is better known to her friends and family as Suze. Basically, the restless souls of the world come to seek her out, and it's her job to help fulfill their unfinished business in order to send them off to the next stage of their life or their death or whatever. It's such a fun, hilarious, quirky story, and true to Meg Cabot's writing style, her trademark humor and sense of sarcasm really shines through. I fly through these books like nobody's business, and I'm really enjoying them. After that, I read a graphic novel called Battling Boy by Paul Pope. This story is about a town named Acropolis, which is inhabited by monsters and beasts that are terrorizing its citizens. And basically the entire town of Acropolis depends on one superhero named Haggard West. That is until one day he dies in the line of duty. So the town is in need of a new hero, and they're very much surprised when a 12-year-old demigod shows up to save the day. To me, there was nothing really new or unique to this storyline, and I felt all of the characters were really flat. And to top it all off, the art style of this graphic novel really wasn't to my liking. So I ended up giving Battling Boy 3 out of 5 stars. And after that, for my graphic novel seminar, I had to read Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. This book is a very dense read, and there's a lot to the story, so it's kind of difficult to summarize, but essentially it's about 2 generations of heroes who kind of don't really have any superpowers and who aren't very heroic. In a lot of ways, I feel like Watchmen accomplishes what it sets out to do, and there are a lot of complex characters with a lot of different sides and different opinions, and they're struggling with different things, and they're all pretty much bad people. And what I liked the best was how the story was told. There's very interesting experimenting with storytelling in this book, and I think it was pretty successful. But I had a lot of issues with the representation of women and violence towards women and things like that. So I think I'll just stop myself there and say that I gave Watchmen 3.5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read Colorless, Tsukuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage by Haruki Murakami. I have already filmed and uploaded a spoiler-free review of this book, which gives a synopsis and also obviously my thoughts on the story. And if you are interested in that, I will leave a link in the description below. So be sure to check out that review if you want to see more of my thoughts on this story, but I gave it a resounding 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read Wonder by R.J. Palacio. This was a buddy read, and I read it with my good friend Luisina from My Reading Glasses. I'm sure most of you know about this story. It's a middle grade book about a young boy named August who is very seriously physically disfigured. Because a lot of his childhood revolved around doctor's visits and surgeries, he was homeschooled for a very long time, but this story starts when he's going to a real school for the first time ever. I thought this was a heartbreaking story, but at the same time it's a very sweet story. And even though I wasn't blown away by it, and even though I didn't love it completely, I did really enjoy it, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I read a book that Luisina actually bought me for my birthday, and that is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness and Siobhan Dowd. This story is about a boy named Connor who is visited nightly by a monster. Basically, this monster is terrorizing Connor because he wants to tell him 3 stories. Once those 3 stories are told, the monster expects Connor to tell him a story of his own, a story that is all about a truth that he's been afraid to face. This is a very short book, but there's a lot of emotional depth to this story and a lot of character exploration that takes place in this very short amount of time. The truth that is buried in this story is so unbelievably powerful, and I think that it's a message that every single person has the right to hear at least once in their life. This is an incredible, incredible story, and by the end, I couldn't deny it. It's rightful 5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is a graphic novel that is a collection of 5 super creepy short stories. There is that dark folklore and fairy tale feel to it, and all of them are so unsettling and unresolved. Emily Carroll does a fantastic job of playing with space and color and text, and the way all of those elements come together in this story is incredible. By the time I finished reading Through the Woods, this was another obvious 5 out of 5 stars. As far as manga this month, I read the next 4 volumes of Oran High School Host Club by Bisco Hattori. I don't want to say too much about this. I love this series. I think you guys know that by now. And if you want an amazing manga/anime series that's a fantastic parody with great characters who you won't even know that you care about until it's too late and you're in too deep, and also characters that make fun of every single progression in the story every step of the way, then you should probably look into Oran High School Host Club. And then for my graphic novel seminar, I read The Shadow Hero by Jean Luen Yang and Sunny Liu. And this comic is the origin story of Hank, the first Asian American superhero. As far as I'm concerned, so far, this is my favorite superhero story. I think it's so well written and so well imagined, and I would highly recommend it to each and every one of you. I loved how ordinary and how human the main character Hank was. I think you'll find that he's a very, very relatable character. This was one of my favorite comics that I had to read for my graphic novel seminar this month, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read a middle grade book called The Gates by John Connolly. This was another one of my Halloween reads, and like I said, it's a middle grade book that's about a young boy named Samuel Johnson. He wants to be a little bit of an eager McBeaver, and he wants to start trick-or-treating on the 28th of October. Obviously, that doesn't work out too well for him, but by going out on that night, he discovers that his neighbors have kind of opened the gates to hell. Even though this book kind of deals with very dark topics like hell and demons and death and all of that kind of stuff, I think it's surprisingly lighthearted. The narration is very cheeky and whimsical, and there's a lot of humor in the voice of this story. So I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And then I started reading a webcomic called Cucumber Quest. So this story is written and illustrated by Gigi, and it is a parody of the traditional hero's journey. Basically, the story is about a protagonist named Cucumber who is supposed to be this great, awesome hero, but he'd rather be studying magic at his new school. He and his sister Almond have to embark on this great quest to try and save everyone. Needless to say, they find out that this task is very difficult, needlessly complicated, and kind of ridiculous. I love everything about this series. It's so much fun. It's hilarious. There's a fantastic sense of humor. It's a great parody. The characters are constantly pointing out how useless and how stupid everything is. It's highly imaginative. It's original. The art is fantastic. The coloring is fantastic. I just love everything about this webcomic. And both of these volumes were some of the easiest 5 out of 5 stars that I've ever had to give to anything ever. In the description, I will link the website to the webcomic so that you can read it in its entirety up until the latest update. And then for my graphic novels seminar, I had to read volumes 1 and 2 of Lock and Key by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. These creepy graphic novels detail the story of the Locke family. The family is terrorized by a serial killer named Sam Lesser. And Sam Lesser murders the father of the Locke family, which forces them to move across the country to this very creepy mansion known as the Key House. And this mansion is an extremely magical, mysterious place. There are many enchanted doorways and keys, and when you open them, there's no telling what could happen. I really enjoyed reading these graphic novels. I think the imagination of Joe Hill combined with the amazing amazing artwork of Gabriel Rodriguez just created this amazing, unforgettable story. It's dark, it's twisted, it's violent, it's creepy, but it's so good. I thoroughly enjoyed reading both of these volumes and I gave them 4 stars apiece. And then I read one of my most highly anticipated releases of 2014, and that is Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley. It's about a main character named Katie who has a pretty good life. She is a chef, she runs a beloved restaurant, she's getting ready to open her own restaurant, and she's admired and respected by everyone around her. However, the stress of opening her new restaurant is kind of starting to get to her, and some things are going wrong, and she really wishes that she had a do-over. And one night she realizes that she can have a do-over because she discovers these magical mushrooms that if you eat them and then write down your mistake and wake up the next day, it will be erased. I thought Katie was a really relatable character in the sense that even if you can't do over your life, you really do empathize with her. And even though the concept of this book is something that's been done over and over again, I do think that Brian Lee O'Malley brought something new to the table with this story. I thought it was a really great story and I look forward to rereading it in the future, so I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Penultimately, I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer. By the time I post this wrap up, hopefully my spoiler-free video review of Cinder will be up, so I will link that down below in case you want to hear more of my thoughts. Finally, the last book that I read this month, actually on Halloween, was The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. And this book is about 8 trick-or-treaters who are out on Halloween night and they're ready to have fun and get scared and get candy, but then their best friend Pip never shows up. The only person who is willing to help them find their missing friend is this very ominous character named Mr. Moundshroud. And basically these trick-or-treaters are taken on this incredible journey through time where they come face to face with history and they learn the origins of Halloween and what Halloween means to all these different cultures across time. And they also learn how their friend Pip could possibly be involved with this very creepy character, Mr. Moundshroud. It's a fantastic story. It's written incredibly well, and I think that everybody should at least read this story once, or at the very least watch the movie. Obviously, upon rereading this book, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars again. In the comments down below, please let me know if you read any of these books that I talked about today, and also let me know what were some of the reading highlights of your October and what you're looking forward to reading in November. But that's it for me and this wrap up. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.